hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic sea shanty is a tale we all know. Navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes, we'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic sky on our moonlit voyage. We'll keep reaching high. We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of might. Let's sing this sea shanty under starry night's light.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave ho, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Oh, voyage across the celestial sea.
Greetings, ladies and metalgens, and welcome to the stream. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day, evening, morning, or whatever it may be, and for some reason I'm talking incredibly loud. My microphone is being sensitive, but not in that way. That's on, that's off. Hello. Oh, there we go. Eyebrows still on the attack. Good to know. Right. That is pure coincidence that my chat happens to be in the appropriate place, that when I look at my chat, it looks like I'm looking at my chat. It's a kitty cat. It's getting a booped snoot. Yes? What? Attention. Why do we have to do it now? Okay, no, go. Be gone, old man. Be gone. Alrighty. People streaming in. How's everyone? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Three days to Christmas. Oh, that's going to make one difference in my life. Just another day. Well, not just another day. I get to eat chocolate for breakfast. wife's got a big Christmas plan, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to nod, smile, do stuff, nod when appropriate. I know that music reference, and no. This is actually quite a quiet cat. All things considered. Staring up at the heavens, well, the lights. Making sure that they're all on and at the appropriate volume. Brightness. Okay, clean glasses. Yippee. Sitting up straight. There we go. Okay, advert is over, apparently. We are sitting up straight, we are appropriately lit. No coffee, but I do have plenty of hydration. We've got red hydration, and we've got invisibility cloak hydration. So one of these is good, one of them is not. Got a headache brewing. It's awesome. Twitch has a stories on Twitch function. No idea. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. What do we want? Oh. Nope, not that one. The spreadsheet of doom. Dum dum dum. So hopefully, let's make that a bit bigger. Should be recording all of these today. But we'll see how the voice handles it. But if we are able to record all of these today, that'll put us 4 weeks ahead on Re-TFOS. Then tomorrow, we can start working on TFOS. I need to sit tomorrow during the day and find some stories to record. In fact, 28 stories to record. And then we should be, hopefully, by the end of this week, close to 3 weeks ahead on the main channel. And 3 weeks ahead on one series on the second channel. Problem with wearing power armor, it's interesting. It's a good series. No complaints. My only complaint is the length of the chapters. So, for each TFOS, for each series, I try to get stories that are between 10 and 20 minutes. That seems to be the golden length for YouTube. Wearing power armor started off at about 20 minutes. It is now averaging at 32 minutes a chapter. Unfortunately, there is only so much I can narrate in a day. So if wearing power armor is longer, means I can't as easily build up as a backlog. If that makes sense.
Hoist the sails high, let the solar winds blow. This cosmic
Cheers, Phoenix Paul. Thank you for popping lost, and I appreciate it. Hope everything's okay. Hope everything goes quick. Anyways, let us move on to what I do.
From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes.
What are we on? 109.
We'll sing our sea shanty as the universe unfolds. Sail up high to the galactic
Okay, doohy, on to the stories.
voyage.
I mean,
Keep reaching high.
turn the background music down a touch. There we go. Now I don't have to fight against it. Anyways, on to the story. Greetings, ladies and metal gents, and welcome to this latest edition of ReTFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called the quadri-seasonal. This particular story is called the quadri-seasonal equation, written by Dathuian. The first contact was fairly routine. We watched as their nuclear-powered spatial wakeship pattered to the edge of our territorial space before we headed out. It took them 6 Earth years, and from what we could tell of their loud, omnidirectional broadcasts, it was going to take them another 4 years to reach their destination. It took us 6 seconds to cover that same space they did, the distance from our nearest federal outpost with the diplomatic envoy. We hailed them. They did the usual, bombarded us with packages of data showing off their accomplishments and such. There was nothing special, some basic ethereal space theory, string theory, as some theoretical mathematics, holographic renderings and sculptures and paintings. There was also a fair bit of their history and anatomy. More of the same. Nearly every species does this. Don't get me wrong, it's always a good sign. But I had already facilitated the statehood of a dozen other worlds by this point in my lifetime. Honestly, I would have preferred the hostile species to another friendly one. I sent out the standard greeting, offering to ferry them back to their homeworld with our diplomatic envoy. They requested that we take them to their destination first. Well, at least that's different. I obliged them. They spent 7 cycles gathering data on the solar system, dropped a few probes, and agreed to be brought home. We were back on their homeworld, Earth, within 10 seconds. The whole time, I hadn't noticed that there was one hitch. As they returned to their homeworld, the new... As they returned to their homeworld with the news, we waited politely outside of their Oort cloud. That's when I saw the notification, 12 of them in fact, of a data packet. 12 files could not be identified and were quarantined. They attempted to simulate the files, but as far as we could tell, they did nothing. Every decryption algorithm we ran returned nothing. Suddenly, they were not so boring. Someone finally realized what they were, some kind of mathematical equations, but very abstract and complex beyond our anything. Nope, that's not English. But very abstract. But very abstract and complex beyond our anything we've ever seen before. Could these dumb apes really be capable of mathematics that even we couldn't comprehend? We couldn't let the federal community know of this, so we quickly put our best mathematicians on the case, solving these equations. Good evening. This goddamn username's too long. I hope you're doing well. In the meantime, I still had to stall. Luckily, they worked slow, inundated by bureaucracy. I received the same welcome data packet 2 more times from 2 separate points, a region called China and another called North America. Good, they're disorganized and unprepared. That'll buy us a lot of time. The homeworld had been working on what we were now calling the Human Mathematical Challenge. Nobody could figure it out. Even the Federation's top grid computers couldn't identify the pattern. Only that there was some kind of wild, far-reaching pattern there. I opened up one. I opened one up to see what it was, and it completely boggled my mind. It was like a seventh-degree polynomial made up of recursive sinusoidal. It was like a seventh-degree polynomial made up by recursive sinusoidal algorithms wrapped in several nested sets of logic algorithms wrapped in a quadrilateral trigonomic proof. I didn't even bother trying to comprehend it further. It was far too beyond my intellect. I was never that good at math anyway. That's why I went into diplomacy. But surely our mathematicians would figure it out. It was a full half revolution before we received a cohesive response from Earth, this time from a place called Switzerland. "Greetings from the President of the United Nations of Earth," said the human over the primitive bandwidth. "Greetings, President of Earth," I responded, trying hard not to sound flustered. "I am Envoy Kaliskis of the Galactic Federal Government, here to extend an appendage of peace in the hopes of establishing friendly and prosperous diplomatic relations." Good thing I've said that phrase at least 1,000,000 times, so it was easy to sound sincere. These humans had put me on guard. Whatever these algorithms are, I can't help but feel these apes are far more than meets the eye. I can't help but feel like these apes are far more than meets the eye. I cannot let myself be caught off guard by whatever they're hiding from us. Fantastic. Fantastic. Please enter orbit around our planet and come to the surface. We have prepared a diplomatic reception so that we might offer you hospitality while we discuss our future relations with your, Federation? Galactic Federal Government, actually, I corrected pleasantly. That would be lovely. I'll be there in just a moment. I brought the ship into their orbit and moved to the shuttle bay, making sure to have my people load up the usual gift package. My first officer and several other diplomats were with me, all murmuring about one thing: the human mathematical challenge. We received landing coordinates and launched immediately. All the while, theories were flying around the chamber. Some thought that it was gibberish, a distraction to make us weak so they could attack us while our attention was elsewhere. Others believed them to be some kind of species of idiot savants with immense theoretical capabilities, but severely diminished practical aptitude. One even suggested they might be the progenitors. Everyone laughed at that. If they were the progenitors, they would certainly not be wallowing in their own filth and pollution on some backwater planet. As we finally landed, we moved out of the shuttle and were greeted by hundreds of humans, smashing their appendages together. The wall of sound was disconcerting, but when they noticed our discomfort, they immediately stopped. That aside, the planet was dismal. The air was dry and hot, the ground rough and dirty, the gravity far too high. Several in our delegation were having trouble keeping their heads upright. Then there was the humans, small, weirdly covered in some kind of smelly wires. It was difficult to look at them. One of them extended an appendage, and I remembered the traditional greeting from the package being a gripping of appendages. The human gripped my pod and squeezed it firmly, shaking it several times while humans took photographs. It was baring its teeth at the photographers, so I bore my baleen at them. The whole situation was completely disorienting. By far the worst planet I've ever been to. As we moved along, the president introduced me to a number of other diplomats and individuals of import. Meanwhile, my cranial implant showed me that nobody should solve it. My cranial implant showed me that nobody could solve it, that we had exhausted all of our resources and even called in other specialists, from chemists to engineers, and even called in other specialists, from chemists to engineers, biologists to architects, physicists, and even poets. Nobody could even remotely comprehend it. We had failed the challenge. I noticed the faces of all of my colleagues as they too received the news from their personal networks. We could not hide the fact that we were somewhat demoralized. As the proceedings continued, the president even began to notice the change in our demeanor. "Is there something wrong, Envoy Kurliskus?" I waved apart at him nonchalantly. "Oh, it's just the gravity is a bit..." It was then that my science officer spoke up from behind me. "What is the solution? What is the solution to the challenge? What does 416E7466F6E696616976616C646692002D2054686520466F?" Whew. 757220536561736F6E6E73 mean. We cannot. I silenced them with a sharp glance, not wanting to show the weakness before the humans. The president was, however, baffled. I'm not sure what 416E what was it? I could not contain myself. Even if you cannot comprehend, even if you cannot comprehend that number, even you cannot comprehend that number. There is nothing by the name of 416E7, whatever that name is. The president responded, still confused. But it was your data packet, the one your scientists aboard the vessel gave us, and your people sent us our arrival on your system, baby. And your people sent us upon arrival in your system. My frustrations were starting to bubble to the surface. Was this a game? Was a story? Were they merely pretending to prolong the suffering? File. I want to say the number again. Were they merely pretending to prolong the suffering? That file. Please, you must tell us what it means. It was then that the aide realized what was going on and pulled up a holographic display in its appendage. Excuse me, Madam President, but Envoy Kurliskus, could you repeat that file name for me? Slowly? I was seething, but I obliged, ever the diplomat. 536565720. The whole time it was typing into its holographic keypad. Upon completion, its face lit up, and he whispered something into the president's ear. A look of realization dawned on the president's face. Apparently, we did not even interpret the name correctly. That's unfortunate to hear, Postmatic. I understand. Yeah, sorry to hear that. Correctly. We do not even... Apparently, we did not even interpret the name correctly. I was calming, my frustration replaced by excitement at the prospect of them finally explaining the human mathematical challenge to us. I could feel my colleagues bristling with equal, if not greater, excitement. My My pleasure, Leopard. I'm glad that it helps. Eye surgery is nothing to turn one's nose up, and it takes quite a while to recover from that. Oh, I see. Just a moment. The president held up a single flange from his appendage and opened its own holographic display. After fiddling with some kind of console, the president finally... After fiddling with some kind of console, the president finally looked up. I suppose I can see how one might mistake this particular file for a mathematical equation of sorts, but it's something else. It's actually my favorite piece. It's called The Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi, one of our planet's most renowned composers. I could no longer contain myself. A composer of what? The president smiled again, this time baring no teeth. The president said nothing. He'd only tapped a holographic button, and something happened. All throughout the greeting area, noise assaulted our senses. I could barely identify one of them, but there were several of them, grating threads creating harmonic vibrations, with the tones shifting up and down. It was more than I could handle. Then it clicked. I could hear the 7 synodial algorithms as the sounds shifted. They changed over and over, each forming one smaller set algorithm within the set algorithm. I had never seen anyone do anything like this with sound before. I could feel the mathematics. It was so beautiful. Tears began to flow from my nostrils. I couldn't control myself. I was overwhelmed with emotion and began to sob openly. What is it? I gasped. Music. End of story. Oops, I think I forgot to update it. Update? Might as well update this one while I wait it. Oof. Hydration again. You're being creepy. The cat is sitting just outside of the light, staring at me. Purring, I think. It's just... It's almost like he's purring at me out of spite. Which, you know, I wouldn't put past a cat. Boop. Now stop looking at me like that. It's been cold all day, because it's been rainy and stuff. But now all the clouds have gone away, and again it's hot. Ridiculously hot. Well, not ridiculously hot, just too hot. Get some air moving, that'll help. Okie dokie. One down, more to go. me.
navigating constellations, charting the unknown. With the stardust in our veins, we are never alone. From the Milky Way shores to the depths of black holes.
Alrighty, on to the next story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular one is called Poker Face, written by Algae Father Anthracite. So, there are...
We're sailors of the cosmos, a crew full of
Good evening, Grant. The author, Ralph Bloodthorn, published the books on Amazon and auto-generated audiobooks on Amazon. However, that is an exclusive thing. So, Amazon owns the exclusivity rights at the moment, and I had to take it all down. It is available. It's on Amazon under Behold Humanity. There are hardcover books. And there is the Amazon-generated audiobook as well. Books. I think there's 10 of them. Raltz is going through a bit of a rough patch, recovering from surgery. So, good luck to him on the recovery. I know it's not fun, any surgery recovery. But he has started a new series called Nerval Wars. So we'll see what that's about at some point. Father Anthracite. So, there are 52 cards, split into 4 suits. Each suit contains a card that is numbered 2 through 10, and has 3 face cards, Jack, Queen, and King. Each suit has a card called an ace, which can be played low or high, depending on the hand in the game. Got it? No worries, Grant. It happens. It's happened many times to the channel. I think we've probably had it happen a dozen times now with different series. I mean, good luck to the author. It's the same thing I say every time. You know, it is more mainstream than my YouTube channel. They get something, and they can possibly use that to take up writing as a profession, so good luck to all of them. Thank you, J-Chain. It is very much appreciated. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And Scion, same to you. Hope you're having a good day. Well as can be. Some days that's the best you can hope for. Got it? Dresgel looked into the face of his human compatriot. So far, I understand. Please continue. Okay, so the most basic game you can play is blackjack. In that game, you are dealt 2 cards, 1 up, 1 down. Up means everyone can see it. Down means only you can look at it. Incidentally, no peek means no one can look at the card. So once you have your 2 cards, and the other player has theirs, you look to see how close you are to the total score of 21. Face cards are worth 10 points, number cards are worth their number, and aces are either worth 1 or 11, depending on your hand. If you get a face card on an ace, if you get a face card and an ace on the deal, it's called blackjack, and you win automatically. If you don't get blackjack, you want to get as close to 21 as you can without going over. Going over is bust, and you lose automatically. If your number is closer to 21 than your opponent, you win. If their number is closer to 21, they win. Dresgel was flipping over random cards from the deck and looking at the pip marks and card... Dresgel was flipping over random cards from the deck and looking at the pip marks on the cards and the faces drawn on them. This seems a most robust form of entertainment. The mathematical formulas involved must be exciting. I think this poker cards would go over quite well with my colleagues back on Gildar. It's a very expensive game set. No, you can get a deck of cards for just a couple bucks here. Here, keep this set. I've got 4 or 5. Chris put a fresh pack. Chris put a fresh deck still in its slipcover on the table and slid it over to the green fabric. Chris put a fresh deck still in its slip. Chris put a fresh neck, still in its slipcover on the table, and slid it across the green felt to his blobby alien friend. You can get nicer decks that cost more, but these are the ones most people use. I know they make plastic ones that are waterproof, and some have fancy artwork. Some have fancy custom art. I got a buddy from college who collects them. He likes the artwork on them. He told me that playing cards dates back to ancient China, and were originally painted on some sort of leaf from the emperor's garden. Playing cards have existed on Earth for hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 at this point, but I'm not sure.
Most intriguing. As a mathematician, I am interested in the number of suits and cards. Why were these numbers selected?
Driscoll was using several pseudopods to hold several cards up at once. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Trez. I have a few thoughts on the subject, as a mathematician myself. I don't know for sure, mind you, but I always thought it had something to do with the rotation of the Earth around the Sun, Chris said, as he gathered the cards from the open deck. He began to shuffle and bridge the cards, and then absentmindedly dealt out 2 hands of 5 cards as he spoke. Earth has 4 seasons, hence the 4 suits. We have 13 lunar cycles per year, so 13 cards per suit. And we have 52 weeks in a year, so a total of 52 cards. My old college buddy told me playing cards were used for fortune-telling way back in history, and astrology, which was the study of stars as cosmic influences on popular... Which was the study of stars as cosmic influences on popular... Which was the study of stars as cosmic influences was popular throughout mankind's early history. It's actually the forerunner to astronomy, which, as you know, is a real science, at least here on Earth. After Chris had dealt out the cards, he set the deck aside and picked up his hand, and arranged the cards in ascending order, left to right. As he finished, he laid the cards face up on the table and spread them in a neat line. So, we have about an hour to get you familiar with the rules of poker before the rest of the guys get you. So, let me explain the rules, and we can play a bunch of practice hands. Good evening, Mew Mew Bep. I'm doing as well as can be. And with as much energy as I can. Hope you're doing well as well. Having a fantastic day. Or as fantastic as you can get. Driscoll had enjoyed the early rounds of the game, as Chris's friends were all very friendly and jovial. They had brought an earth beverage called beer, which Driscoll enjoyed. The ethanol was similar to the several natural substances on his planet, but it did not affect him as the human counterparts. He also enjoyed the heavy botanical taste of hops used to flavor the beverage. After several hours of playing the game, Driscoll had gotten a firm grip on the mechanics of play. They were playing a game called 5-card draw, in what sets of cards had fixed point values, and cards could be traded out to try and make the best hand possible. He was able to use his skills as a mathematician to roughly figure out the odds of the particular hands, and bet accordingly. Jonesy, one of Chris's friends, had gone through all his chips and had a rebuy. had gone through all of his chips and had to rebuy to get more chips to bet with. Driscoll was, much to his own concern, starting to lose chips very quickly, and would soon have to rebuy himself.
So,
said Driscoll, as Michael, another of Chris's friends, began to deal the next hand.
I know Chris is a mathematician. What do you all guys do for a living?
I am a sales rep from a construction firm, said Michael. I own a catering business, said Jonesy.
I work for a college's fine arts department, said Bill. I see. Have you all been playing poker long?
Driscoll asked as he gathered his hand and sorted his cards in the fashion Chris had taught him. I
only got into it when I was in college as a student, said Bill.
Well, it's high school for me. One of my buddies ran a game in his garage every other weekend, said Michael.
I only started playing a couple of years ago. I couldn't afford it till then, said Jonesy. Most interesting. May I have 2, please?
Driscoll flicked 2 cards to discard the pile. Driscoll flipped 2 cards onto the discard pile. The following Monday, Chris was walking next to Driscoll on the way to the lunch and the faculty lounge.
Chris, may I ask a question regarding last week's poker game?
Sure thing, Dres. What's up?
How was it that I lost to you and Michael during the poker game? I made conservative bets. I made conservative bets, and only when I was relatively sure that I was best odds to win. Yet I lost. Did I misunderstand a rule or something of that nature?
Chris laughed a little as he heard his friend explain the reasoning. No, Dres, you played perfectly. They got in line at the cafeteria. Chris handed Driscoll a tray and placed his own on the edge of the counter. Did you see how Jonesy kept throwing an arm over the back of his chair and slouching a little? He was trying to look relaxed when he was really nervous. He had a good hand and was trying to keep looking at... He had a good hand and was trying to keep from looking too excited, so everyone else would bet. It's called a bluff.
A bluff.
Driscoll placed a cube of gelatin on his tray. Driscoll placed a cube of gelatin on his tray. A bluff, no. It's trying to raise the amount of money in the pot without letting on that you think that you have an advantage. There are other kinds as well, like trying to buy the pot, which is where you put in a big bet and try to force others to fold.
I think I misunderstood the game of poker, said Driscoll.
How's that, bud? Asked Chris, getting a turkey sandwich.
It's about psychology, not maths, said Driscoll,
grabbing a bottle of water for himself and Chris.
The cards are too cool. The cards are cool, though, so I'll keep those.
End of story. Hydration with energy. I don't know what they use to dye this stuff with, but it stains absolutely everything. Can't be healthy. It doesn't stop me from drinking it, but, you know. Processing. Might as well close that one. Blip. Blip. Aha! Pooping out the snoot. Oh, the cat's gone. Whoops. The story is no longer available. It was a good story. I remember it. This happens on occasion. Alrighty. Excuse me. An elite training. Go. "20 seconds to go. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Free Teen Fuss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Elite Training, written by Algae, Father Anthracite. Breck was calm. He had trained for numerous rotations with the regular army, and having proved adept at field operations, had been kicked over to Special Forces for additional training. After nearly half a cycle, he and his squad were about to embark on their final training mission. He was currently in a shuttle, descending from a transport ship into orbit to the surface of a Class 9 death world. Brack and his squad mates were prepared to send an entire 10 cycle. Brack and his squad were prepared to spend an entire 10 cycle on the planet's surface. Being a Class 9, the only thing the planet lacked in terms of danger were oversized apex predators. The army had inoculated the entire Special Forces as part of training, so the dangerous microfauna should not prove too inconvenient, but the plants and some of the large animals could prove problematic. The shuttle set down on the edge of a wooded area. The team quickly grabbed their gear and headed down the ramp of the shuttle, and rallied off to one side, while the equipment specialists offloaded the specialized gear that they would need. Once unloaded, the shuttle dusted off, and Breck and his squad were alone. Terp, the squad leader, barked orders, and everyone started moving. Logistics took readings both manually and from the orbital ship's sensors, and plotted a course to the bivouac area that had plotted a course to the bivouac area they had plotted out before dropping. Comms set up the beacon so both the team and the shuttle could Comms set up the beacon so that both the team and shuttle could relocate the drop zone for retrieval. The scouts got direction and ranges from logistics and started to trailblaze through the woods. The main squad would follow shortly. Breck and Dern, both medics, geared up and waited for the main force to get the go sign from Terp. Once the beacon was set and the equipment was distributed and loaded, Terp gave a quick yip and gestured for the troop to march. They moved without talking, walking as silently as possible, as they headed to the bivouac area. Their site was near a river that ran through the forest. After about a quarter rotation, Terp yipped again, and when everyone looked, he gave the signal to stop and take cover. One of the scouts appeared out of the brush and spoke with Terp. After a few moments, Terp tapped the scout's shoulder to signal understanding. He yipped again, followed by a signal to change course. Apparently, the scouts had found something dangerous enough to reroute them. Apparently, the scouts had found something dangerous enough to reroute the team. After a half rotation and 2 additional reroutes, the team finally arrived at the bivouac. With minimal dialogue, the camp was set up. The equipment was deployed and activated. When everyone was done, everyone but the patrol detail sat around a small, solid fuel stove and heated their meal packs. Once they were done eating, most went to their tents, except for the next patrol shift, who relieved those who had yet to eat. A quarter of rotation before dawn, Breck was awoken with the team. A quarter of a rotation before dawn, Breck was awoken with his teammate Frez, and they did the last patrol before everyone would wake for the day. About halfway through his patrol around the perimeter, he noticed a predator skulking around the edge of the woods. He released the safety on his rifle, taking aim down the sight, and then flashed his light on the animal. It immediately started, surprised at the sudden illumination, then ran off into the woods. Nothing else happened until everyone was woken for the day. After a quick meal, the squad broke up and started the various tasks of the mission. Breck and Dern would trade off going out on patrol and staying at camp, each caring for the various small injuries that were common on such missions. Breck was at camp when the patrol returned early. Breck ran over to make sure there was no medical emergency, and when it was clear that no one was hurt, he moved aside so the patrol could report. The patrol had found signs of a campsite about 5 grills upriver, near the second bivouac site. This threw the serious wrench into the mission plan. If there was indigenous people around, the scope of this mission was changing. The scope of the mission was going to change drastically. The planet had been scouted by no large animals, but the planet had been scouted, but no large animals had been detected. If they had been missed, this would become a stealth mission. After several more days, numerous campsites were found along the river, but they were all fairly old. Terp was of the opinion another armed force was using the planet as a place to train, but kept the teams going out on patrol in stealth mode, just in case. Breck didn't really care, as he enjoyed the extra training in stealth maneuvers. The injuries to this point had only been minor cuts and abrasions. The only notable exception had been one squad member who broke out in a serious rash after passing through a plant that exuded an irritating oil through its leaves. There were also a couple of troopers who were dealing with some sort of gut bug that kept them bound to the camp. There had been several engagements with some dangerous animals, and the third night had some Category 5 lightning Category 5 lightning / thunderstorms, but other than that, the mission went smoothly. 2 days before the mission was to end, comms got a message from the ship in orbit. Another ship had been detected, and a drop shuttle was headed down to the surface near the drop zone Breck's team had used. Terp sent a team to the drop zone to observe the new arrivals. Breck and the rest of his squad spent the rest of the day packing up the bivouac and getting ready to bug out. After half a cycle, the observation squad called in via encrypted signal and reported that the new arrivals were also heading into the woods. They were a group of 5 humans with minimal gear. Terp told the patrol to follow the newcomers and report back when they had a bearing on their destination. Breck and the rest of the team at the base camp waited. Breck and the rest of the team at the base camp waited for the all clear to head out to the drop zone for extraction. If another force was operational in the same area and they were discovered, this training mission was a potential political disaster. After the scouts reported the newcomers were clear of the area between the bivouac and the drop zone, Breck and the team started towards the beacon. As they arrived at the drop zone and the shuttle began its descent, the observers reported that the humans were setting up camp in one of the old sites that had been discovered. Terp told the observers to stay for another few minutes, then head back to the drop zone. The observers confirmed, then went silent. About 5 minutes before the shuttle arrived, the observers rendezvoused with the squad. Breck was helping organize the equipment nearby when the observers reported in to Terp. He could barely believe what he heard. After they arrived at one of the old campsites we had found, they set up their tents and built a fire. We were using an auto-translation mic when we heard one of them say they had come here last rotation. Apparently, this entire planet is a nature preserve for humans. They said it was one of their favorite places to vacation. End of story. I just realised I don't know where my cell phone is. Ah, there it is. It was hiding. I am just going to take a quick break. I will be back in a couple of minutes.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious ore. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the cratered plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars' hidden riches. We're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Sailing through the cosmos, it's my final voyage, leaving Earth behind, seeking stars to my homage in the depths of space. When no one can hear, I'll sing my space shanty. Let the stars draw near, raising up the anchor, setting sails to the sky, bidding farewell to this world, no tears left to cry. With constellations as my compass, I'll navigate to the outer.
And back.
I'm a star
Ready. Done processing. Saving. And we can move on to the next story.
serenade the heavens with my cosmic lullaby. A space shanty melody as I say my last goodbye.
Alrighty, moving on to the next story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take stories from where I take stories I've narrated in the past and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Wrath, written by Algae Father and Anthracite. This particular story is called Wrath, written by Algae Father Anthracite. Zyko sat on the command ship, dressed himself in body armor, checking his weapons, making sure his supplies were stocked in his carryall. He strapped his visor to his face and left the small room, heading to the ready room for the final briefing before the drop on Sol 3. His people had come to Earth to conquer the system and claim the resources that were available. Water, iron, fissionable material, all sorts of resources were waiting to be claimed, while the humans sat there, squatted. Good evening, Alpha Noob. I hope you are doing well. While the humans sat there, squatting on the treasures of the Sol system, unwilling to harvest them. After getting his briefing and uploading the ops data to his field comp, Zyko, along with his drop mates, walked to the dropship and strapped in. The buzzer sounded, and Zyko hung in the air, weightless in the free fall of the planet's surface. After what felt like an eternity, the retros fired, and the straps dug into his articulation points, threatening to tear him to pieces briefly, before the pressure let up. After a few minutes, the pod's thrusters cut out, and dropped the last few centimeters to the ground. The doors popped open, and the drop group hustled out into the strange alien air. No one on the drop pod would ever make it home. Ikrit stood on the bridge of the flagship of the Jovian fleet. The Pleria were the pride of the fleet, having been through six invasionary conquests. The Sophons of the galaxy had a nasty habit of leaving resources uncollected, and the Jovians found this wasteful. The inhabitants of those systems would not gather the precious commodities of these systems. The Jovians would. This drop was not going as the Ikrit and his people, the Jovians, had hoped. The inhabitants of the system, who called themselves humans, were proving to be especially tenacious. Thank you, Durs the Demon, for the $4.99. It is immensely appreciated. With a little alien face. Thank you very much. It is very much appreciated. I hope you have a fantastic holiday period. Whatever you may believe or want to celebrate, I hope it's fantastic. Whatever it may be. Especially tenacious. Already troop losses were nearly double of that were for the last two invasions, and not a single city had been completely pacified. Some footholds were made, but the people of this planet proved to be both exceptionally difficult to kill and preternaturally good at fighting in nearly every type of terrain. Ikrit was going through reports. The humans were a nightmare. Their tactics and strategies were disturbingly varied. Some were the brutal shows of force meted out by the various military organizations on the planet. Others seemed to be the actions of rogue groups of civilians. From frontal assaults to sniper attacks to guerrilla tactics, there was an endless string of reports, each detailing a plan of attack, each detailing a different plan of attack, different strategies, desperate tactics. After the first few weeks, the losses had suddenly jumped up in number. Soldiers were dying of Soldiers were dying of never-before-seen infections, poisonings, and equipment failures. It took months to determine that microorganisms of the planet were often pathogenic in nature, and the Jovians had no mechanisms for defense against them. The humans had somehow managed to taint either the food or the water left in their cities, leading to the massing numbers of deaths. The equipment failures were all cases of sabotage, either mechanical or, just as likely, covertly installed software that would wreak havoc on control systems. According to one report, an entire shuttle facility was lost when an inbound shuttle suddenly lost power on approach and crashed. The core of the ship's drive went critical, and the resultant detonation scoured an entire kilometer of land clear of any buildings or structure. Ikrit assessed the progress his invasion had made. He had expended an enormous amount of resources on this invasion. Millions of troops, thousands of vehicles, countless tons of food, water, and ammunition. All Ikrit had to show for his efforts was a pile of reports describing the many failures of the troops and all their equipment. In some places, in the Eurasian landmass, troops were literally freezing to death as supply lines were constantly disrupted. Vehicles were constantly malfunctioning due to control software corruption. Buildings and bases were constantly harassed, often to the point of destruction. It wasn't uncommon for homemade bombs to be flown in with small flying drones, which crashed into the bases, causing damage and disrupting operations. In the Americas, there were reports of some humans were hunting Jervians like they were prey animals. More than a few patrols had been found strung up by their legs from trees. A running tally was found on one of the data nets the Jervians had managed to tap into. Civilians were trying to see who could kill more of his troops, like it was some sort of game. There were rules about what counted as a fair kill. They were killing his troops like animals, and they had to restrict methodology to make it a challenge. Ikrit compiled the losses in materials, resources, and lives. He sent the data to the homeworld along with his recommendation to withdraw. The humans were devastating enemies. The final incident had been when he received a report of an entire operational base that had been overrun. Every usable resource was removed, and the only thing left behind were the corpses of the Jervian soldiers. Every single one had been killed with a weapon made out of native plant called bamboo. Ikrit had received the command, the loss of resources. Ikrit had received the command. The loss of resources were incongruent with the progress being made. Invading Earth was a losing proposition. The withdrawal command was issued. Troops returned to the ships and shuttles that were barely operational and were still suffering from software corruption. Once the planet had been cleared of troops, the fleet exited the system and made a jump to hyperspace. A few days into the trip home, a communique came in from Jervia. The Pleria, along with the rest of the fleet, was to remain in orbit, and the troops were spent orbit. And the troops were to spend 2/10 of an orbit on board in quarantine. Considering the microbes of Earth, Ikrit considered this a wise choice. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace and began to orbit Jervia. The surviving troops were glad the peace and quiet, as they had been under constant strain on Earth, never knowing when the natives would launch an attack. While they were in orbit, Ikrit had the shuttles run through any and every diagnostic it could to ensure that they worked properly when it was time to send troops planetside. Later, it would be determined that this was a terrible mistake. The quarantine was over, and troops were being shuttled down to the surface. Ikrit was on his way down with the first load to give his report, when the whole shuttle suddenly launched. When the whole shuttle suddenly lurched to the side, Ikrit cursed and called the pilots to see if they had regained control. They informed him that the shuttle was under control, but the turbulence was caused by an explosion. From the front screens of the cockpit, a massive smoke cloud could be seen rising in the air. Just as the shuttle landed, another massive explosion shook the tarmac. Nearly 2 decades later, Jervia was finally returning to normal. After the Pleria had taken up orbit, it began communicating with the ground-based systems in the Jervian homeworld. Voice and video calls to loved ones, controls and telemetry data, reports, and unbeknownst to the German... Voice and video calls to loved ones, control and telemetry data, reports, and, unbeknownst to the Jervians, a computer virus. It silently copied itself to every system it could, starting with the shuttle controls, and working its way through every data system on the Jervian homeworld until it was infecting some 80% of DataNet. When the built-in countdown timer of the virus hit 0, the virus started to randomly kill processes in whatever seemed to be infecting. In whatever system it was infecting.
Transports fell out of the sky. Power plants would shut down or go critical. Ground vehicles were go out of control or suddenly shut down. The death toll was enormous. Whole stretches of lands were rendered uninhabitable due to radioactive and/or chemical contamination. Emergency services were crippled by non-functional equipment. Communications all but halted. Data nets went dark as the hardware they ran on failed. Industries ground to a halt. Millions died in the ensuing chaos. Millions more starved to death because automated and computerized farming equipment failed. What food was gathered was difficult to transport. Riots broke out, claiming even more lives. When a sample of the virus was finally analyzed, hidden in the code was a single line of Terran Common. Anger becomes a sit of wrath when it is directed against an innocent person, when it is unduly strong or long-lasting, or when it desires excessive power, or when it desires excessive punishment. End of story. Up toot. Toot toot toot. Sorry, my neck's a bit stiff. Hydration. Yes. One of my favorite ringtones is early 2000s. They had like lots of weird ones, but there was one that was Ozzy Osbourne shouting at you. Good evening, Joseph. I hope you're having a good day, or as good of a day as you can. But yeah, so you had Ozzy Osbourne like swearing at you to answer your phone. And I changed my phone to that, and then forgot. I was in a meeting with like my CEO at the time, and my phone went off. And all of a sudden there was Ozzy Osbourne swearing at me to answer the phone in the middle of a corporate meeting. A bit difficult to explain, but we got there. Dog snoring. Anyways, on to the next story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this latest edition of Read Deepos, where I narrate old stories I've narrated. Where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Recreational Activity, written by LG Father Anthracite. The couple sat in the room, totally relaxed and smiling. They had clearly been through this before. Narrating knew that he was dealing with a couple of professionals. He went over the itemized list of equipment the inspectors had found. A cutting tool with long fiberglass handle, a dozen metal spikes, several small containers of liquid combustibles, trioxane cubes, several small folding blades, a packet of compressed chemical tablets, enough preserved food to spend weeks in hiding, some sort of portable collapsible shelter, rope. Leonard was certain these two were up to something. He was relatively certain they were planning to cause some sort of trouble, possibly assassinate someone, then flee into the forests here on Grill Prime to avoid capture. The forest of Grill Prime was vast, continent-spanning ecological reserve. They were mostly unexplored and only minimally mapped out. Larrett signaled the guard at the door, who unlocked and opened it. Larrett walked into the room with two would-be assassins. He was careful to not show them his back. They were probably skilled in close-quarters hand-to-hand combat. Larrett sat down opposing them at the table. He made a show of placing photos of their equipment on the table. They remained calm and smiling as Larrett finished. They remained calm and smiling as Larrett finished and situated himself at the table. "Who is your target?" Larrett asked. The two creatures began to make strange battling sounds. Larrett sat back, afraid the noise might signal the start of some attack. The guard outside looked through the glass to make sure everything was okay in the room.
"Look," said the larger of the two, "we came here to camp in the forests of Grill Prime. We heard the place was totally unmapped. We wanted to go check it out."
The large alien started to bare its fangs, a gesture that repulsed Larrett. "If you are here to explore the forests, where's the rest of your equipment?" Larrett countered the suggestion that they would go explore in continent-spanning forests with only a few tools. It would take much more equipment to properly measure and mail. It would take much more equipment to properly measure and mail the terrain. It would take much more equipment to properly measure and mail the terrain in the forest.
"We aren't going to go that too far."
That was itchy.
"We aren't going to go too far into the woods, just a few miles. The compad in my pack should be able to get us back to the city when we are done. Actually, if you bring me my compad, I can show you pictures of our last location."
The smaller creature was...
We aren't
going to go far into the woods, just a few miles. The compad in my pack should be able to get us back to the city when we're done. Actually, if you bring me my compad, I can show you pictures of our last vacation.
The smaller creature was speaking this time. Its voice was of a higher pitch than its partner's.
Larrett gestured to the guard, who stuck in his head. Larrett requested the compad. The guard nodded and left the room. Larrett was sure there was a ploy, but he was determined to make sense of all of this. "If you are here for recreation, why do you bring weapons?" Larrett asked. He pushed forward a couple of photos on the table.
"Those aren't weapons, they're tools. The hatchet is good for cutting firewood. The pocket knife... Nope, smaller one. Those aren't
tools. Those aren't weapons, they're tools. The hatchet is good for cutting firewood, and the pocket knives are handy for all kinds of stuff. Stripping small branches from a stick, slicing food, cutting rope," said the smaller one. "What of the liquid fuel?"
It's for our camp stove to cook with," said the larger one.
"These, metal spikes?" asked Larrett. "Stakes to hold down our tent in the wind. These are fire starter cubes, water purification tablets, so that we can safely drink water we find. A tent, preserved food, and rope," said the smaller one, pointing at each item in the photos and naming it. The guard opened the door and handed Larrett the compad. He laid it on the table. The smaller creature entered a security code and then called up stored images on the device. There were hundreds of images of the two aliens surrounded by trees, in small watercraft on rivers and lakes, climbing up rocky escarpments. Climbing up rocky escarpments. This is Yellowstone on Earth. This is Yellowstone on Earth, said the larger one. There were pictures of them in a valley full of enormous crystal spikes, in a cave with more crystal formations, and swimming in an underground lake bordered by stone and crystal. Hiplik 7's Crystal Valley. That place was amazing, said the small one. The picture showing them hanging from some sort of harness high in the air, suspended over a deep valley. Zip-lining across the Denbar Canyon on Cygnus. The larger one bared its teeth at the smaller one, and the smaller one took the larger one's hand, bearing its teeth back. Larry gathered his documents and took the compact back, then left the room. He needed to confirm a few things. After a few minutes of research, he discovered humans, the name of the two creature species, were notorious for spending time living in primitive conditions as a form of recreation. There were several worlds that had started to cater to the strange habit. Larry was confused and uncertain when another customs guard came in and informed him that the latest shuttle had 3 more groups on it, all with similar equipment. Larry sighed. Who would want to go live in the woods? End of story. Sounds like a good vacation to me. I've been camping a good while. Haven't been camping since I started the channel, actually. If I think about it. Maybe I'll do some camping once we're in Portugal. Maybe. You'll see what happens. On to the next story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this latest edition of Read Tifos, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Trouble with Customs, written by LG Father Anthracite. I never tried to hide anything. Go ask the four-armed guy. I never tried to hide anything. Go ask that four-armed guy. I tried to tell him I needed to go through inspection, but he told me to get in line with everyone else. Miris Klept, Chief Customs Officer on the Bulgarian space station, Galtru, looked at the fleshy beige alien in front of her. She signaled to her aide, who left the room. I understand why you would need a collection of Class 3 restricted edge weapons, she began. May I understand why you would need a collection of Class 3 restricted edge weapons, she began.
The creature chirped, "Tools!"
Class 3 restricted tools, and you have documentation permitting you to carry them. What worries me is that you also have this.
She thumped a small case on the edge of her desk with a foreclaw. "Those are part of my toolkit. I can't work without them," said the creature.
Mirrors turned the terminal on her desk and checked the search results. They were still compiling. What could you possibly need a vial full of poison, much less for? And don't get me started on the 6 controlled substances, quite frankly. I don't trust the rest of the stuff that you have in there either. There's a whole bottle of acid in there.
The creature was preparing to respond when the door opened and the aide and the 4-armed customs officer walked in.
"Ah, Quexel, come in," said Maris. "Sit down, please."
Maris waved towards the other open chair. Quexel nodded and moved to sit. Maris's aide stood in the corner, out of the way.
"Quexel, did this being approach you outside of customs?"
Maris asked. Quexel looked at the beige alien. "Well, yes, sir. It said that it needed to go through inspection, but it had not yet gone through the screening. I told it that inspection was past screening and that it would have to get screened first. Then it said okay and then got in line."
"When the scanners went off, what did you do?" asked Maris. "Lay on the floor with all my limbs extended face down." "Did it Lay on the floor." When the scanners went off, what did it do?" asked Maris.
"Lay on the floor with all its limbs extended face down."
"Did it resist at all?"
No, sir."
"Thank you, Quexel. Please return to your post."
The large alien stood, nodded to the officer behind the desk, and left the room. Maris's assistant stayed in the corner, waiting in case there was any more errands to run. The terminal pinged, and Maris tapped a few keys with a claw tip. She consulted the paperwork the alien was carrying. She went down the list and checked every item on it against her screen.
"You come from a death world, don't you?"
she asked after confirming all the paperwork. "That's what they tell me," said the creature, moving its head up and down. It was Maris. It's what Merritt assumed was a gesture of agreement.
"Very well, you are free to go. Please observe the greatest caution with these supplies you have."
"If I may ask, sir, are you a Kremlin?" asked the creature. It stood and began to gather its tools in bags.
"Yes, I am. Why do you ask?"
Maris replied. "You eat sheng nut paste a lot?"
"I do. It's my favorite of mine. And my mate's."
"Next time you make it, add a little sprinkle of shan root, just a couple of grams. Thank you, gentle beings. Good day." The creature left the office. Maris clapped, and her mate Brev were making sheng nut paste, a favorite pastime of the couple. When Brev wasn't looking, Maris sprinkled in a few grams of shan root. When they sat to eat, Maris informed Brev that she had altered the recipe and asked that he give his honest opinion. Brev placed a small ball of paste in his mouth and chewed. "Hey, it's great! What did you do?" he asked quickly, rolling a second ball of paste.
"Shan root, just a couple grams,"
Maris replied, rolling her own ball. "Huh, who taught you that?" Brev asked.
"A human chef, of all things. I was shocked he even knew what sheng nut paste was, much less how to make it better. Considering the diet of those people, I'm surprised that he would even try sheng nut paste."
"You took a cooking tip from a death worlder?" Brev asked. His foreclaw stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked suspiciously at the small ball of paste. She chittered at his reaction. She popped the ball into her mouth and said, "Human chefs consider cooking an art, and they would never do anything to purposely hurt someone with food. Humans have many strange customs." End of story. Up dooty doot. 3 more to go. One of us, one of us, one of us. Hydration. Was energy. I miss those old introductions. But, you know, YouTube will be YouTube. Suck the fun out of everything. But, not YouTube. People with red tape will suck the fun out of everything. I'm sure there are many fun-loving people who work there. The people who hold up the rules, not so much. Although I suppose with the amount of content they have to deal with, making an exception is very difficult. Okay, so this is a little graphic, so be warned. Thanks for reading. This was a warning from the author. Can't be too graphic because I narrated it before, but considering we've had some pretty dark stories, not exactly. Alrighty, on to the next story. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called One of Us. Warning by the author. This is a little graphic, so be warned. Anyway, it was written by algae father Anthracite. Rend was sore everywhere. He groaned a little as he tried to sit up. He opened his eyes slowly and looked around. He was in a small room, apparently made of cement. It was too cold and he wanted to sleep, but he forced himself to do an assessment. All limbs and joints moved, no bleeding, minor cuts and scrapes, and what felt like a nasty bump on the side of his skull. All of his equipment was gone except his uniform. He sat in the room for several hours and was just starting to think that he was going to pass out from the cold when the door opened. A human came in and started speaking in a language Rend couldn't understand. He pointed a gun at Rend and waved towards the door. Rend stood slowly and shuffled towards the door. The chill in the room had taken its toll on his muscles, and he had stiffened up a lot without the heater that was part of his gear loadout. Rend headed down the hall, followed by a human with a gun. He was taken to another room, one with a furnace in it. Before he could get warmed up, though, he was shackled, wrist and ankle, when chains set in a wall. He was set down. He was testing the chains when the door opened and a group of men came in. Some carried guns, others carried what looked like furniture. Rend was forced into a chair and bound to it with thick rope. Another human leaned. Another human leaned in and said, "You're an invader, and you are not welcome here in Galactic Common." Rend looked at him with contempt. "I was born in Spain, you jackass," he replied. The man turned and took a length of rubber hose from the table that had been brought in and slammed it into Rend's torso. Rend gasped for breath. "You are an invader. Admit it, you came to steal our world. Say it." The man continued to hit Rend in the thighs, arms, and torso as he screamed. The warmth Rend had enjoyed now betrayed him by leaving him fully aware of each hit. "Rend Filigis, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines, 375895620, Rend said once he caught his breath. The man switched from the rubber hose to the nightstick-like baton. "Admit that you're an invader." "Rend Filigis, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines, 357895620. A shin was hit. "You say you're an invader," the man screamed. "Rend Filigis, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines, 357895620. Jabbed with the stomach with the end of a bat. "If you admit it, this will stop." "Rend Filigis, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines, 657895620. His other shin took a hit. The man waved someone over. A large olive-skinned man with a beard came over and squared up in front of Rend. He swung hard and connected with the side of Rend's head. "Rend Filigis, Sergeant,"
United Earth Combat Marines. 3557 895620. After what seemed like an eternity, Rend was placed back in the cold cement room. This time, he didn't fight the cold, and fell asleep. He dreamt of his time in basic training. He hadn't been the first Kriglik to join the UEC Marines, but he was one of the few. He had a hard time, even with his personal heater. He never snacked off and never backed down, and by the end of basic, everyone in the platoon had accepted him. As a sniper, he proved exceptionally adept. The ability to match ambient temperature, lie motionless, and move inhumanly slow had turned out to be an excellent match to his natural physiology. After proving himself in basic, and again in sniper school, Rend had spent several years operating in numerous missions in various systems, earning his place amongst his squad mates and various accolades from his superiors. Ren had been on his way to special training session. He was supposed to teach some of the techniques he used for the few other Kriglik recruits. He was supposed to teach some of the techniques he used to a few other Kriglik recruits in the He was supposed to teach some of the techniques he used to the few other Kriglik recruits in the USC Marines were hoping would become snipers. They were in a particularly empty stretch of industrial building when the vehicle was attacked. Big on Earth, there was no need for a caravan, and so the Humvee had been rolling solo. Rend had no idea what happened to the driver or the Marine who had been escorting him to the training session. Rend woke up. He looked through swollen eyes at his surroundings. The furnace room again. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Admit that you're an invader and this doesn't have to happen. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. They beat him until he passed out. Rend woke up again. He was still tied to the chair. Tied to it again, he wasn't sure. They didn't ask anything or make demands this time. They just hit him. They used clubs, hoses, fists. They poured scalding water over him. Rend Villigus, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Command. Yeah. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines 357895620. Blackness. Rend woke up again. He was cold, the cement room. The ache was somewhat suppressed, but he still couldn't move. He heard footsteps coming down the hall, louder than normal, more feet than normal. He couldn't see. His eyes were swollen shut. The door opened, and heavy footsteps came into the room. Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Command, United Earth Combat Marines 657895620. He mumbled past a thick tongue and broken teeth. At ease, Sergeant, said a familiar voice. A warm blanket was wrapped around him, and he was carried out of the room on a stretcher. Rend fell asleep. They what? Filmed the whole thing. They were trying to get him to confess to being an invader. Apparently, they are a group of xenophobes who thought allowing immigrants to stay on Earth was basically ceding to the aliens. What else is on the tape? The general asked. 7 hours of Villigus being tortured pretty brutally. He only ever says, Rend Villigus, Sergeant, United Earth Combat Marines, 3578559. Oh, no, that's the wrong way around. 357895620, replied the colonel. Are any of the xenophobes still alive? asked the General. Several were captured. They are in custody and being interrogated. We are checking to see if there are any connections to known terrorist groups or off-world governments. Luckily, most of them decided to fight, so they got shot.
How's our boy?
The General opened a file and looked at the medical report. The list of injuries was 2 pages long. He's going to need some time. The surgeries alone will take about 1.5 years, another 18 months of physical therapy. Years of mental therapy, the Colonel said. The Colonel.
I don't care how. You fund every last bit. Take it from my check if you have to. I'm going to see him. Clear my schedule and call my car around.
General, do you think that's a good idea? He can't even stand.
That man spent years carrying out his duty, defending the interest of his home planet, and some fucking racist dipshits thanked him by breaking nearly every bone in his body. And the only thing he did in response was declare his allegiance to the Corps. I would be ashamed of myself if I couldn't look him in the face and apologize as soon as possible. If anyone ever questions his loyalty to Earth or the Corps ever again, I'll personally ram this medical report down their throat.
Yes, sir, replied the Colonel.
Who cares what species he is? Who cares?
Yes, sir.
Who cares what species he is or where his grandparents were born? Rend is one of us.
End of story.
Yes, it was dark, but I think poignant. Not the darkest story we've ever had on the channel. Ugh. Yawn. What? Why are you being so clingy today? Cat. Sorry. My apologies. That was me. As if it would be anybody else. Alrighty. Story number second lost. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Misunderstandings, written by Algie, Father Anthracite. Whitney Nichols sat in the interrogation room, nervously fidgeting in her seat. She had been yanked out of line at the boarding platform and unceremoniously dumped in the room hours ago. Since then, she had been interviewed several times by several different alien species, all of who asked her... Good evening, Black Phoenix. Hope you're doing well. Same to you, Monkey. Hope you're doing well as well. All of whom asked who her target was and who she worked for. She kept telling them that she was simply an aide to the Terran ambassador and that she had no target and did not know what they were talking about. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened and several aliens and humans walked into the room.
Miss Nichols, on behalf of the Galactic Legal Quorum, allow me to apologize for the manner in which you were treated. I assure you no ill intent was behind this. However, as Terra has just started the process of joining, there are a great many things our two cultures do not understand about each other, the Galaxy representative said, bowing deeply at the waist. She wished that she had a better grasp on which morphology was which alien race. There is no need to apologize, as I have not received any rough treatment. In fact, may I offer my own apologies for whatever actions I took to cause this incident, she replied, also bending deeply at the waist. She was, at least, trained in the proper protocol for interactions with GLQ member races. You have done nothing wrong, Miss Nichols. The incident was caused by a misunderstanding. You have a medical implant, is that correct? The Galaxy representative asked. Yes, that is correct, she replied, turning to look at the slightly uneasy reactions of the other aliens in the room. It was this device that caused the incident, Miss Nichols, said the GLQ spokesbeing. I don't understand. Why would this cause an issue? She replied. It showed up in the security scans when you boarded. As an inorganic inclusion in your biomass, it was immediately suspect. Such things are uncommon amongst GLQ member species. In fact, they are usually only seen in captured assassins, typically concealed weapons or bombs, the Galaxy explained. Once we approached your contingent and explained why you had been sequestered, they explained to us that what we have found, said the Zitchki representative, its ant-like antennae were waving around in what was distressed fashion, though none of the humans knew that yet. We were shown medical records, the video of the human surgery. The antennae waved even more violently. Indeed.
Thank you very much, Black Phoenix, and same to you.
The video. Indeed, many of us were distressed to find out about such things. There are very few species, and I've moved. I can't read. There are very few species that could survive such manipulations. Most GLC species are not from planets such as Earth, said the Marinic representative.
Good evening, Merlin. Hope you're doing well.
Whitney noticed a slight pause in the Marinic representative statement. Planets such as Earth. Death worlds. This was something to do with humans being the dwarves of the galaxy, squat, strong, and fond of ethanol. Whitney smiled a little and remembered the bike accident that had caused her injury. She was only 12 when it happened, and the plate they'd used to fix the brake was still in her thigh, just above her knee. If it interests you, I can show you the surgery site. She started to hitch up the leg of her pants and watched in barely suppressed glee as the alien representatives all became more agitated. Colors shifted, antennae practically whirled like propellers, eye stalks retracted. She placed her foot on the stool that she had been sitting in and revealed a 5-inch-long scar that ran from her knee up to her mid-thigh. I can assure you, there is no easy way to remove the titanium plate in there, or use it as a weapon, she said.
That's fine, thank you, said the Jalaxy. We can see the wound has healed.
If you poke right there, you can feel the edge of the plate. She pushed her finger into the end of the scar just above her knee. That was when the Zitchki representative passed out. End of story. The cat has fallen asleep. For now. It will haunt me in my dreams. Alrighty, story the last for the evening. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Arts, written by Algae Father Anthracite. And then it's called A Bird. At 9 o'clock at night. I think its clock is broken, or watch. There were a great many species throughout the galaxy known for their achievements in the arts. The Zitchki were renowned for their enormous sculptures, carved from a single massive branch of the gadbolt tree. The artists would chew the designs into the wood, creating massive, intricately interwoven shapes, with moving parts, chains and pulleys, counterweights and more, from a single tree limb. The Bacchanal created massive drive engines, warp generators, that not only hauled sophons and the cargo throughout the galaxy, but the That's almost Porky Pig. But the mechanisms themselves, the devices were breathtaking in their form and complexity. Every nut perfectly torqued, every bolt polished to a mirror. The Koga clans would put on concerts. The thrumming of the whole clan, deep in their throat sacs, would fill whole amphitheaters with harmonics, melodies, and hauntingly beautiful. Recitals were often difficult to get tickets for, as they sold out swiftly, regardless of venue. The galaxy was rife with such beauty. The work of many species were documented, studied, dissected, and discussed. Museums and universities often featured classes in both creation and appreciation of all the multiple forms. But of all the art forms made by all the species from all the civilized galaxy, none was so prolific as the humans. They would often practice the art of other cultures, their own and those of other species. The thing that set humans apart from most of the galaxy in relation to art was language. Most species adopted a single tongue long before they ventured beyond the heliosphere of their home system. But humans were, let's say, stubborn. They all knew Terran Standard, but despite having a unified language, they insisted on keeping regional mother languages alive. Sese nes pa una pepe, is a phrase that all humans art lovers know, despite it being from a now depreciated language called French. The phrase Ich bin ein Berliner is a German phrase from one of the great orational records of pre-contact Earth, notable for being in a speech of entirely different language. Another German phrase, Albert macht frei, is a phased threat and stills sadness. Another German phrase, albeit möchte frei, is a phased threat and is a phrase that instills sadness, heartache, despair, and shame to many humans millennia after its use. Cogite ergo sum, a Latin phrase, was deeply introspective part of early human philosophy. Many early religions used Latin as a language, and because of Earth's unique history, it became the language of our sciences as well. It became the language of their sciences as well. Many Earth flora and fauna have Latin taxonomies. Many Earth flora and fauna have Latin taxonomies. They diversify the tongues and the diversity of tongues has served Earth well, as nearly any word or phrase in the galaxy can be translated to one old Earth language or another. The Biafek were astounded by the use of the zeitgeist to explain the cultural shifts that ran through their people. No one had ever translated it before in a single word. Similarly, the Taloxi Anu was also easily translated to humans, and a great many other difficult-to-convey concepts from a wide swath of the galaxy were translated into earthling words and phrases. So, when the great Earth publishing houses gathered and produced a universal dictionary, the sales were astronomical. Every consulate, every dignitary, every ambassador, leader, commander, everyone wanted a copy. The dictionary was, after many years, cheaply bought, widely available, and had created a whole new economy on several worlds, and was constantly updated through the infinite on most planets and space stations. It brought about a new age of communication and understanding. The device was small, roughly 2.5 by 3.5 inches, and about half as thick, and about half an inch thick. It is nearly indestructible. The front of the touchscreen device, capable of accepting input from digits, pulps, pseudopods, tentacles, claws, manipulators, and even stylus, when all else failed. It held a dictionary of every commonly used word in every language, with its definition, origin, and closest translation to every other language. It is considered by many to be one of the finest works of art in the galaxy. For some reason, only humans understand when the device is powered up, a phrase appears in English that humans will only say as a joke, but any attempts to explain it fail. When it first turns on, the screen reads, "Don't panic." End of story. I was actually talking about that book or movie 2 nights ago. Phew. All right. The voice is getting long in the tooth for the day, methinks. Because I've already worked half a day, and then this is the other half of the day. The old voice is a bit tired. But we are now close to 4 weeks ahead. Basically. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. 4 weeks ahead on Read TFOS. So tomorrow, most likely, after I've gone and found more stories, it's narrating does take it out the voice. It is a lot more strenuous in the voice than even just talking. Anyways, so yeah, tomorrow we'll start doing TFOSs instead of Read TFOSs.
And we'll try to get that 4 weeks ahead. So that hopefully, when we leave the country in early January, there will be enough content for everyone to enjoy. And it gives me a little bit of wiggle room on the other side to settle in before I have to start producing stuff again. The endless treadmill that is content creation. And then sometime this week I need to go to the dentist because one of my crowns came out. Yippee. I cannot describe how I'm not looking forward to that. Dealing with the dentist. But it needs to be done, so hopefully find one that's open. Because of course it would happen 3 days before Christmas. But anyways, this is not supposed to be a bitching session or a woe is me. It's supposed to be stories and fun and excitement and entertainment. So, thank you all for spending your evening with me, or whatever the local equivalent is for you. It's very much appreciated. 2 hours in the modern day and the attention economy is a long time, and I do appreciate it. I will see everybody tomorrow. Yep, tomorrow. Same time, same place. Different stories, though. So I hope you all have a fantastic one, or as fantastic as it can be.